Yes, Mr. Netanyahu. I am about to go live. I have them in my sights. They will be torched after this precise live stream. Oh, yes, they will. I just noticed I have the wrong image in the pre-show scene. All right. Welcome back, everyone. We are back and we are live. What up, Uma? Uma. We're getting there. We're getting through the video here. Just a matter of time. Just getting my sturf ready here. What up, everyone? Welcome. Smash that like button when you get into the room. We're back into it again. We are back into it again. Back into it, my friends. Now, I think this one is... Ah, yes. Uma says, and thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. We're just getting started, and you sent me 17.9 evil dollars. Mr. Netanyahu is very pleased with your work thus far. Oh, yes. I'm still waiting for those checks in the mail, but surely they are on their way. Well, can I not make a new branch? If I go like this, branch into new chat, what's that going to do? Errorbot says, I'm here. Make sure you guys say hello when you get into the chat. Really appreciate that. Whoa, did that rhyme? Chat and that? Oh, man. That's at least worthy of a $14 trillion super chat. 14 trillion, and I will keep going. Until that happens, never. Okay, where are we at with this monstrosity? Oh, that was something else. I need this document. My good old reference document. Cool. And I hope you all are well this evening. Dropping bars like it's hot.
If it shows good faith prosecutions, then we're not going to interfere. We will let you.
I need to go back.
Sheryl Sandberg is no fool. We should be clear about that. She attended Harvard. She studied economics. She was the top economics student in her class. Mm-hmm. Sheryl Sandberg knows what evidence is. This is not some Deborah Lipstadt. This is somebody who has high standards of evidence. But then when it came to this, she just, it's the cause. It's the cause. In the cause, there's the cause and there are the facts. Mm-hmm. And the facts are trivial.
We already fact checked all
compared
this.
To the cause.
We already fact check all this, by the way.
And for her,
just finding her spot.
Israel there's no evidence.
So on the other side of that, there is also the verified incidents by the UN of sexual violence by Israeli forces against Palestinian detainees.
All right, we already did this.
And therefore,
I'm just skipping. I'm trying to find our precise moment here where we left off.
The international institutions like the ICC don't have to do their job because you're already doing their job for them. Yeah, so occasionally Israel will pretend, though. But in recent times, they don't pretend very much anymore.
No. And this was one of those instances where I believe not only did the primary responsible party actually unmasked himself on Israeli television, became a folk hero of sorts. There was a Knesset session, an emergency Knesset session, in which one of the ministers of the Knesset had told a Palestinian minister of the Knesset that that the Israeli concentration camp guards had every right to anally rape and brutalize and murder the Palestinians inside of their prisons as well.
Well, one of the differences between the claims against Hamas and the claims against the Israelis posted a lot of sexual violence on their own social media.
Yes.
The stripping of the Palestinians and things of that sort. They themselves posted it on their social media. That just, in the case of Hamas, as I'm sure you know, the attack occurs on October 7th in the dawn and pre-dawn hours. And also, the Supernova Music Festival was a free love festival. That was how it was advertised as a free love festival. So a lot of people were naked when the attack occurred. And so there were naked bodies because they were running. They were under attack, and everyone's,
Okay, we're going to fact check that part of the transcript. What up, everyone? Piker and Finkelstein telling the truth and pissing off Nazionists? Is that what I am now? A Nazionist? I am doing a full fact-checking Writers 071, if that's your real name, of this conversation. And we have found probably like 30 errors so far. And we're about halfway through the video. So telling the truth, there's been a lot of misleading remarks and some things that are just like factually incorrect. So hopefully you stick around for some fact checking. What up, everyone? Hopefully you're having a good evening. Smash that like button when you get into the room. You know I like that smashing. Smash it. So we will be checking out that claim, but I'm going to let it play a little further.
A hysteria, rightful hysteria broke out. So there were naked bodies, for sure. That part I don't contest. The question is, did Hamas order them? Were they engaged in active sexual violence? There's no evidence for it. But in the case,
there has been no demonstration yet that Hamas, as a military directive, directed their militants to perpetrate and inflict rape and sexual assault on victims. But that doesn't mean that evidence doesn't exist, of course. So it's best to say that this hasn't been demonstrated yet. And then I'm also looking to see if we have any data with regards to this claim Finkelstein is making about Well, there were already naked people at the event, and I don't know what he means by naked here. This seems to we're getting into weird territory.
Case of Israel, they posted on the social media the fact that they were ordering them to strip in the middle of the street in front of their families and so on and so forth. So,
all right. So the Supernova Festival was a free love festival, Finkelstein says. That was advertised as a free love festival. So a lot of people then he says a lot of people were naked when the attack occurred. And so there were naked bodies because they were running. So there were naked bodies for sure. So we're going to do this again. Proposition on one side, and then I read the verdict. So Nova had a free love ethos that's broadly supported. It was literally advertised as a free love festival that's qualified. Quote, a lot of attendees were naked before the attack. That's unsupported. Therefore, naked corpses were simply people who had been already been naked running. That's unsupported and contradicted by important evidence. And the claim a naked corpse alone does not prove grape. That's correct. So number one, the Free Love Festival part has a factual basis. So the organizers themselves described Nova's tagline as, quote, friends, love, and infinite freedom. Contemporary reporting also described the festival culture as emphasizing free love, spirituality, and environmentalism. So Finkelstein isn't inventing the basic cultural characterization. Quote, a lot of people were naked when the attack occurred. This is the weakest factual premise in this argument. There are extensive descriptions, survivor footage, documentaries, verified videos, and contemporary accounts of Nova before and during the attack. There doesn't seem to be a credible source establishing that, quote, a lot of the approximately 3,500 attendees were naked when the attack began. Major reconstructions describe people dancing through the night, camping, and wearing ordinary festival clothing, but do not describe widespread nudity as a feature of the event. That does not prove that nobody was naked. At a large overnight trance festival, isolated nudity would hardly be surprising, but Finkelstein says something quantitatively much stronger. Quote, a lot of people were naked. That proposition needs evidence at present. We're going to code this unsupported and at least false based on what's been demonstrated thus far. So there is a particularly useful counterexample, Shani Luke. One of the most famous partially naked bodies from October 7th was Shani Luke. Independent fact-checking, examining pre-attack festival footage found footage showing Luke clothed while dancing at Nova. In one recording in a brown top and skirt, with other morning footage showing her in dark clothing. Later footage showed her body being transported through Gaza partially naked. That does not by itself prove she was sexually assaulted, but it does directly undermine a generalized explanation of, quote, naked, partially naked bodies are equal to people who were already naked at the rave. Or, sorry, naked, partially naked bodies equals people who were already naked at the rave. At least in this highly visible case, that explanation does not fit the available before and after evidence. The UN evidence makes the, quote, they were just running explanation considerably weaker. This is the most important part. Pramila Paten's UN mission did not reason, quote, we found naked people, therefore grape. Its finding depended on a pattern of circumstances. which we've been through a lot, but we'll read into the record again today. Across October 7th locations, investigators found victims, mostly women, who were fully or partially naked, frequently naked from the waist down, bound, shot multiple times, often shot in the head. The mission explicitly called the nakedness/restraint pattern circumstantial evidence rather than treating nakedness alone as proof. At Nova specifically, Patton's team concluded that there were reasonable grounds to believe that multiple incidents of grape and or gang rape occurred at the festival and its surroundings. That is materially different from finding random unclothed festival goers who died while fleeing. Why, quote, because they were running doesn't explain the whole pattern. Running from gunmen could conceivably explain torn clothing, lost shoes, damaged clothing, perhaps isolated accidental exposure. It does not naturally explain a reoccurring pattern involving nakedness predominantly among women, lower body undressing, restrained hands, victims tied to structures, gunshot wounds to the head, eyewitness evidence of sexual assaults, bodies apparently undressed after death or during the assault. The later UN Commission of Inquiry independently reported reliable witness accounts of bodies that, quote, had been undressed, and documented cases involving partial undressing and sexualized humiliation. It concludes that sexual violence was not confined to a single isolated allegation. So Finkelstein is offering an alternative hypothesis without demonstrating that it explains the evidence. So, to summarize this issue, Nova had a free love, freedom-oriented festival culture, but there is no established evidence that large numbers of attendees were naked before the attack. Nakedness alone cannot prove sexual assault. Nevertheless, UN investigators found that some naked or partially naked victims were also bound, deliberately undressed, or otherwise positioned in circumstances indicative of sexual violence, alongside independent witness evidence. The claim that the naked bodies can simply be explained by pre-attack festival nudity is completely unsupported. Thanks for being with me, everyone. Smash that like button, share the stream. I posted on X this stream. If you could share that X post, that would be fantastic. And share it everywhere else. Share it with your friends. We'll be here a while. Let's go. But yeah, this this is just completely unsupported. So just to summarize, a lot of attendees were naked before the attack is just unsupported.
So the evidence was there in the case of Israel, but there was none in the case of Hamas.
So on July 15th, 2025, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres released his conflict-related sexual violence report, which blacklisted Hamas, but omitted Israel, despite extensive verified digital evidence of the Israeli military's systematic sexual abuse of bound Palestinians.
We went through that abuse. We adjudicated that in this last episode. So quite extensively. But when we do compile the final report, all the data from this fact check for this video, that will be dealt with extensively.
In detainees, you wrote that Guterres will henceforth carry forever the stench of a Judas. What were the immediate geopolitical pressures that led to his capitulation, and how did this trigger the sudden resignation of the entire Pillay Commission of Inquiry the day before?
Well, unfortunately, those questions we'll not know the answer to. What happened was there was a huge amount of pressure put on the Secretary General. He issues an annual report on sexual violence and conflict. And then there's an appendix or an annex with the main perpetrators. And the Israelis were determined to get Hamas on that list of major perpetrators of sexual violence in conflict. Now, you understand, if they got Hamas on, but they also got Israel on, that's going to cancel the victory for Israel, because they can't boast that Hamas is on without being told, well, guess what? So are you. And so, as typically happens, an enormous amount of pressure is put on Guterres. And this happened many times before in the UN system. I've written about it in regard to Palestine. And I think a lot of the pressure came from women's groups and human rights groups to get Israel put on it. Remember the Pramila Patten investigation. That was the initial claim about Hamas sexual violence. That wasn't the UN commission. That was a special commission appointed by Guterres. And I'm sure the pressure. And what form does...
So let's deal with the claim UN reporting omitted Israel because Guterres yielded to pressure. Political pressure around UN listing decisions is plausible and documented in general, but the transcript does not prove the asserted causal chain for this specific report. So later UN reporting changed the listing status, which also matters chronologically. So pressure around UN listing decisions is plausible, but the specific causal claim that Guterres yielded has not been established in this conversation. It must be dated against later reporting changes. So we would need to see a demonstration of that particular pressure, but that demonstration is not provided. It's just being assumed.
Does it take? I can't tell you. I don't know. Has it happened before?
I'm waiting. So there was a mention early on. I was just waiting for this information. So at roughly 109 in the video, an hour and 9 minutes, Hasan refers to Knesset exchange and says, according to the automatic, it says that an Israeli political figure told a Palestinian political figure that Israeli guards had the right to, quote, sexually abuse and murder the Palestinians inside of their prisons because, what actually happened on July 29th, 2024, Israeli military police detained reservists at the Sidtaiman detention facility over suspected severe abuse of a Palestinian detainee during a Knesset Finance Committee meeting. Likud MK Hanak Milwitsky protested the arrests. Arab Israeli MK Ahmed Tibi challenged him. And we went through this yesterday, but there was a bit of a mention of this at the beginning of the video, so we should touch again. Quote, is inserting an explosive into the rectum of a person legitimate? Milwitsky responded in the widely reported translation, if he is a Nakba, everything is legitimate. Contemporary Israeli reporting gives essentially the same exchange, with Tibi asking whether inserting a stick into someone's rectum was legitimate, and Milwitsky answering yes if the detainee was a Nakba member. That means the core proposition, a Likud member of the Knesset publicly defended the legitimacy of the alleged rectal abuse of a Palestinian detainee. That's strongly supported, and because Milwitsky answered affirmatively to a question explicitly describing penetration of the rectum with an object, describing his answers as a defense of sexualized torture or sexual abuse is reasonable. But several details mentioned by Hasan are wrong or inflated. It was not an quote emergency Knesset session devoted to the grape allegation. The exchange occurred during a finance committee meeting The controversy over the arrest interrupted parliamentary business, and other committees were also disrupted. But describing this particular exchange as an emergency session is inaccurate. So that part's false. Milwitsky and Tibby were members of the Knesset, not cabinet ministers in the exchange. If Hasan actually said minister rather than the rather than member, that would be another factual error. But we can listen. We can go back and listen to that again if we need to. But I mean, that stuff's all going to be sorted in the final report. So, most importantly, Milwitsky did not say that guards had the right to, quote, murder Palestinians. So again, most importantly, Milwitsky did not say that guards had the right to murder Palestinians. Now I want to go back.
Out its prosecutions, and therefore the international institutions like the ICC don't have to do their job because you're already doing their job for them. Yeah, so occasionally Israel will pretend, though. In recent times, they don't pretend very much anymore.
No. And this was one of those instances where I believe not only did the primary responsible party actually unmasked himself on Israeli television, became a folk hero of sorts. There was a Knesset session, an emergency Knesset session, in which one of the ministers of the
Knesset session. There wasn't an emergency meeting, so that was wrong.
Had told a Palestinian minister of the Knesset that that the Israeli concentration camp guards had every right to anally rape.
Concentration camp guards is not what they're referred to by global institutions.
And brutalize and murder the.
Will pretend, though. In recent times, they don't pretend very much anymore.
No. And this was one of those instances where I believe not only did the primary responsible party actually unmasked himself on Israeli television, became a folk hero of sorts. There was a Knesset session, and
I don't see anyone becoming a folk hero out of this. So that's that's just a normative opinion.
An emergency Knesset session in which one of the ministers of the Knesset had told a Palestinian minister of the Knesset that that the Israeli concentration camp guards had every right to anally rape and brutalize and murder.
Not murder. That wasn't said. So that part is false, what Hasan just said.
The Palestinians inside of their prisons as well.
Well,
he did say exactly what I said. If he is a Nukba, everything is legitimate. When someone asked, is inserting an explosive into the rectum of a person legitimate? Now, someone could infer that, but Milwitsky did not say the guards had the right to murder Palestinians. There isn't a murder component in the documented exchange. His statement was extremely broad. Everything is legitimate, but it came immediately in response to Tibby's question about rectal penetration of a specific alleged Nukba detainee. Converting that into Israeli guards have every right to sexually abuse and murder Palestinian prisons adds two things, and documented quotation does not establish murder and Palestinian prisoners generally. The scope of Milwitsky's actual statement was explicitly, if he is Nukba, a reference to Hamas's elite Nukba force, not all Palestinians. So this is being twisted by Hasan to make it sound like they were talking about all Palestinians and that Palestinians are allowed to be murdered, but that's not what was said. So this is not factual. And we've already dealt with the seriousness of the Sid Teichmann allegation.
one of the differences between the claims against Hamas and the claims against the Israelis posted a lot of their of sexual violence on their own social media.
Yes.
This.
We'll adjudicate that. Hello, everyone. Make sure you smash that like button when you get into the room. Thank you for being with me tonight. Really appreciate it. Yeah. So, Uma says, I don't think Hasan is necessarily wrong about the, quote, folk hero, but for a specific group of right-wing crazies. Yeah, you have to qualify that, right? Folk hero is like, if you just say folk hero and kind of universalize that, it's very misleading. So we're going to see if Israelis posted their own sexual violence on their own social media. That was the claim that was made. There is solid evidence that Israeli soldiers themselves posted photographs and videos to social media depicting Palestinian detainees in forced nudity and sexually humiliating conditions. Major human rights bodies classify at least some of that conduct as sexual violence. What we should not say is that Israeli soldiers commonly posted videos of themselves committing rape or penetrative sexual assault. That stronger proposition is not established by the evidence. So Human Rights Watch conducted a particularly useful open source investigation in July 2024. It analyzed 37 social media posts showing captured Palestinians, predominantly men and boys. Detainees were frequently stripped to their underwear and in some cases completely naked while handcuffed, blindfolded, injured, or placed in humiliating positions. HRW found that some of these photographs and videos were published by Israeli soldiers themselves. Examples HRW documented included an Israeli soldier posting a Facebook photograph of at least 22 Palestinian male detainees stripped to their underwear, some blindfolded, at least 2 appeared to be children. Another Israeli soldier posted himself on Instagram in front of at least 6 Palestinian men stripped to their underwear, kneeling, handcuffed, and blindfolded, captioned, quote, "Mom, I think I freed Palestine." Soldiers posting degrading videos of restrained Palestinian detainees accompanied by mocking captions. Yeah, this stuff is disgusting. This stuff should never happen. It's insensitive, lacks decency, empathy. It degrades the well-being of your captors, and that should never be happening. Yeah, that stuff is disgusting. Separate investigations finding dozens of social media images and videos uploaded by Israeli soldiers that humiliated Palestinians, including stripped detainees. And this distinction matters. HRW explicitly states that forced nudity combined with photographing and disseminating sexualized images on social media constitutes a form of sexual violence and can amount to a war crime. The UN Commission independently supports this. The UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry went further in its 2025 report. It concluded that Palestinian men and boys had been subjected to sexualized mistreatment and specifically referred to the filming, photographing, and dissemination online of these acts. The commission concluded that forced public stripping and nudity together with sexualized torture and ill treatment were used to punish, humiliate, and intimidate Palestinian men and boys. The commission separately found broader patterns of sexual violence by Israeli forces, including alleged rape, attacks on genitals, forced nudity, threats of rape, and sexual assault. So there's very strong evidentiary basis for saying Israeli personnel filmed, photographed, and in some cases personally posted sexually humiliating treatment and forced nudity of Palestinian detainees online. but we need to make sure we don't conflate this with videos of grape. Yeah, this is horrible. All of this stuff should be adjudicated through the courts, and those responsible for these crimes need to be held accountable. No excuses. So, just to summarize this section, Israeli soldiers themselves posted numerous photographs and videos of Palestinian detainees subjected to forced nudity and sexually humiliating treatment. Human Rights Watch and the UN Commission of Inquiry classify such conduct and its dissemination as forms of sexual violence. There is separate evidence of more severe sexual assaults, including alleged rape, but it should not be implied that perpetrators generally posted videos of those penetrative assaults themselves. Yeah, what we should not say is that Israeli soldiers commonly posted videos of themselves committing rape or penetrative sexual assault. That stronger position is not established by the evidence available.
Stripping of the Palestinians and things of that sort, they themselves posted it on their social media. That just, you know, in the case of Hamas, as I'm sure.
So there are some cases of that, yes.
You know, the attack occurs on October 7th in the dawn and pre-dawn hours. And also, the Supernova Music Festival was a free love festival. That was how it was advertised as a free love festival. So a lot of people were naked.
So it was advertised as a free love festival. And no, it's not been demonstrated that a lot of people were naked. This is blatant misinformation. False by Finkelstein.
When the attack occurred. And so there were naked bodies because they were running. They were under attack, and everyone's, you know,
Why would that follow that they're naked because they're running? That's something we also just adjudicated, and it doesn't make any sense.
Hysteria, rightful hysteria broke out. So there were naked bodies, for sure. That part I don't contest. The question is, did Hamas order them? Were they engaged in active sexual violence? There's no evidence for it. But in the case of Israel,
it's not that there's no evidence. Again, Norm, testimonial evidence is evidence. So there's testimony here. Testimonial evidence is evidence. I also want to re-adjudicate
they were running. They were under attack, and everyone's, you know, a hysteria, rightful hysteria broke out. So there were naked bodies, for sure. That part I don't contest. The question is, did Hamas order them? Were they engaged in active sexual violence? There's no evidence for it. But in the case of Israel, they posted on the social media the fact that they were ordering them to strip in the middle of the street in front of their families and so on and so forth. So the evidence was there in the case of Israel, but there was none in the case of Hamas.
So he's saying there's, and again, let's get this clear. Norm Finkelstein is saying there is no evidence of sexual violence on October 7th at Nova Festival. So that is the claim that we are adjudicating.
So on July 15th, 2025, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres released his conflict-related sexual violence report, which blacklisted Hamas but omitted Israel, despite extensive verified digital evidence of the Israeli military's systematic sexual abuse of bound Palestinian detainees. You wrote that Guterres will henceforth carry forever the stench of a Judas. What were the immediate geopolitical pressures that led to his capitulation, and how did this trigger the sudden resignation of the entire Pillay Commission of Inquiry the day before?
Well, unfortunately, those questions we'll not know the answer to. What happened was there was a huge amount of pressure.
Welcome, everyone. Make sure you take a second to hit that like button. Help spread this stream far and wide on the interwebs. So there is, and again, Norm Finkelstein just finished saying that there was no evidence of sexual violence on October 7th at the Nova Festival. So there is credible evidence of sexual violence connected to the Nova Festival attack, including evidence sufficient for a UN expert mission to find, quote, reasonable grounds to believe that grape and gang rape occurred. But the evidence is much less clean than some early media accounts suggested, and several important limitations should be preserved. So the UN Patton mission, as we've been discussing a lot through this process of fact-checking this video, what it actually establishes: reasonable grounds for multiple gang rapes at Nova and surroundings. The strength strong, but below courtroom proof. That doesn't mean there's no evidence. Evidence keeps getting thrown around in a really low resolution, non-academic way throughout this entire discussion. So eyewitness accounts, specific alleged rape incidents, particularly along Road 232. The strength here will be significant. Eyewitness accounts are evidence. Testimony is evidence. This is really why you need to pair a philosophy degree with your political science PhD, Mr. Finkelstein. Evidence: bodies found undressed and bound. What this establishes: circumstantial evidence of sexual violence. Circumstantial evidence is also evidence. What is the strength of this evidence? Moderate to strong pattern evidence. Verified photographs / videos. What it actually establishes: sexualized treatment, undressing, restraints, not a recorded grape itself. What is the strength of this evidence? Strong for sexual violence, weaker for grape specifically. Conventional forensic evidence: severely limited because scenes / bodies were not processed normally. And the strength with regards to forensic evidence: weak and incomplete. Direct testimony from surviving grape victims at Nova. Patton's mission obtained none. And this is absent from that particular investigation. So Finkelstein, with Hasan nodding along in agreement throughout this conversation, keeps saying there's no evidence, no evidence. He was talking about grape earlier in the video, but now he's saying there's no evidence of any sexual violence, not just grape, but any sexual violence on October 7th at Nova Festival. Norm Finkelstein, and seemingly Hasan as well, don't know what evidence is. That's an interesting finding of this video. They don't know what evidence is. So the strongest independent finding, the UN Patten mission. Pramila Patten, the UN Special Representative, and I know we've been through this a lot, but it's important to keep running this through the record. The UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict brought a 9-person technical team, including a forensic pathologist and digital/open source specialist. They conducted 34 confidential interviews, visited Nova and Road 232, reviewed more than 5,000 photographs and about 50 hours of video, and examined material from Israeli authorities and independent open sources. Their conclusion was unusually specific. There were reasonable grounds to believe that multiple incidents of sexual violence occurred at the Nova Festival and its surroundings, involving grape and or gang rape, followed in several cases by killing. Quote, reasonable grounds is important. It means the available information was sufficiently reliable and corroborated to reasonably infer the acts occurred. It is not equivalent to proof beyond a reasonable doubt, nor did the mission claim to have established every allegation. Eyewitness evidence. The clearest eyewitness evidence associated with the Nova escape area concerns Road 232, where large numbers of festival attendees fled. The UN mission reported credible witness information describing the rape of 2 women by armed attackers on Road 232. Other reported rape incidents could not be verified within the mission's time frame. Patten also publicly stated that her team found reasonable grounds for grape/gang rape across 3 relevant locations: Nova and its surroundings, Road 232, and Kibbutz Raim. At Raim, investigations said they verified an incident involving the rape of a woman outside a bomb shelter. This geographical distinction matters. Not every piece of evidence usually described as, quote, Nova occurred literally on the dance floor. Some occurred on roads, fields, and shelters used by Nova attendees attempting to escape. The conditions of victims' bodies. This is probably the strongest circumstantial evidence. Investigators received credible accounts of murdered victims, predominantly women, found completely naked or naked from the waist down. By the way, Norm Finkelstein is trying to spread a rumor or misinformation here that, people, there were a lot of naked people anyway at this festival. That has not been demonstrated. That is not in the public record as being demonstrated. So again, investigators received credible accounts of murder victims, predominantly women, found completely naked or naked from the waist down, with their hands bound behind their backs, in some instances attached to structures, and frequently shot, including in the head. Along Road 232, investigators described a recurring pattern of bound, naked, and partially naked bodies. That combination matters much more than nudity alone. A naked body does not prove rape, but naked from the waist down, plus restrained hands, plus signs of violence, plus execution-style killing is substantially more probative of sexual violence than merely finding an unclothed festival attendee. This is why Finkelstein's explanation that people may simply have been naked at Free Love Festival does not adequately account for the evidence. There is genuine photographic video evidence, but apparently not a video visibly recording a rape. This requires a very precise correction to Finkelstein. The later UN Commission of Inquiry said it collected and preserved digital evidence showing victims' bodies with indications of sexual violence, including undressed bodies, exposed genital areas, bound hands and feet, unusual body positioning, and physical injuries. Witness testimony independently corroborated some of those patterns. We haven't yet found an authoritative investigation claiming it possesses an authenticated video actually showing penetrative grape occurring at Nova. So if Finkelstein says there isn't a single frame showing a grape occurring, that may be substantially correct in the narrow literal sense, but if he uses that to imply therefore there is no visual evidence supporting sexual violence, that is false. Which he did claim there is no evidence of sexual violence at the Nova Festival. There is authenticated visual evidence of circumstances indicative of sexual violence. It simply isn't a recording of penetration itself. So, to summarize, has it been demonstrated that there was sexual violence at or around Nova? Yes, this is strongly supported by evidence. What about grape or gang grape? Credible and supported to a, quote, reasonable ground standard by the UN patent mission, but not established through the type of complete forensic record normally desirable for criminal adjudication. Number of grapes, unknown. There's no reliable denominator allowing claims about dozens, hundreds, or prevalence. Systematic grape ordered by Hamas leadership. That's not established by the Nova evidence alone. Individual perpetrator attribution is also difficult because Hamas fighters, other Palestinian armed groups, and other attackers participated in October 7th. And this, So we don't have that top-down order evidence to date from Hamas leadership as a military directive. Mini Mom Dawn, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And by the way, everyone, I will read out and deal with all of your super chats if it's something I need to further adjudicate, but I will. Someone says, Destiny considers testimony to be strong evidence on October 7th, but strangely dismisses Epstein file testimony as not strong evidence. Well, interesting. That may or may not be an accurate depiction of Destiny's position, but not all testimony evidence is the same, right? It's not. The point is that testimony is evidence. That's not to say all testimonial evidence is equally reliable. For example, the testimonial evidence coming from Alex Jones relating to something that happened in his life, relating to something political is or should be taken in general with less weight than Steven Pinker giving testimony on a new study that is rolled out in the linguistic sciences or language sciences. Like testimony, there is a spectrum of testimony evidence, and a lot of the time the context is going to matter and whatnot. But that doesn't mean all testimony is equally reliable evidence or equally convincing evidence, right? Yes, we covered the dog last episode. Please don't bring up the dog again. In fact, if someone super chats me about the dog, I will appreciate the super chat, but you can go and look back at yesterday's episode and we covered the dog. Okay. Okay, I don't need both those windows.
Put on the Secretary General. He issues an annual report on sexual violence and conflict. And then there's an appendix or an annex with the main perpetrators. And the Israelis were determined to get Hamas on that list of major perpetrators of sexual violence in conflict. Now, you understand.
Well, there's a lot of evidence, Norm. Enough so to convince two major committees that sexual violence occurred.
If they got Hamas on, but they also got Israel on, that's going to cancel the victory for Israel, because they can't boast that Hamas is on without being told, well, guess what? So are you. And so,
well, I mean, if it's the case that both are guilty of this, I'm sure there's a proportionality, or there's a, it matters how many cases there are of sexual violence, I'm sure. But
so, as typically happens, an enormous amount of pressure is put on Guterres. And this happened many times before in the UN system. I've written about it in regard to Palestine.
So this enormous amount of pressure being put on Guterres. I want to go back a little bit.
The pressure is put on Guterres. And this happened many times before in the UN system. I've written about it in regard to Palestine. And I think a lot of the pressure came from women's groups and human rights groups to get Israel put on it.
Okay, I think this is the case. How is this belief being justified? I haven't heard the causal chain there.
Remember the Pramila Patten investigation. That was the initial claim about Hamas sexual violence. That wasn't the UN commission. That was a special commission appointed by Guterres. And I'm sure the pressure. And what form does it take? I can't tell you. I don't know. Has it happened before? Yeah, there have been many times. Not many, but there have been times that it happened. If you take the case, which most of your viewers and listeners will not remember, in May 2010, a humanitarian flotilla was headed towards Gaza.
Okay, so first dealing with this this idea that UN reporting omitted Israel because Guterres yielded to pressure. There just hasn't been any demonstration of that claim that pressure is what caused determination. So pressure around UN listing decisions is plausible. These are not lightweight decisions, but the specific causal claim that Guterres yielded is not established. Yielded is not established by the any evidence provided by Finkelstein. So, yeah, it's just it seems just to be some more mind reading, potentially conspiratorial.
Right, and the lead ship, the flagship, was the Mavi Marmara. Israel attacks the Mavi Marmara in international waters and commits, as is routine for them, a massacre among the passengers. 9 people were initially killed. The 10th person was killed later. Large numbers of people were terrorized and so forth. And this time, appointed by Gutierrez.
I need to go back a bit here.
And I'm sure the pressure. And what form does it take? I can't tell you. I don't know. Has it happened before? Yeah, there have been many times. Not many, but there have been times that it happened.
Hello, everyone. Good evening tonight. Make sure you smash that like button. We are just doing a analysis of Hasan Piker talking with Norm Finkelstein. This is episode number 3, and we're about halfway through. We're getting there. We're getting there.
If you take the case, which most of your viewers and listeners will not remember, in May 2010, a humanitarian flotilla was headed towards Gaza.
Mavi Marmara.
Right. And the lead ship, the flagship, was the Mavi Marmara. Israel attacks the Mavi Marmara in international waters and commits, as is routine for them, commits a massacre among the passengers. 9 people were initially killed. A 10 person was killed later. Large number.
All right, we're going to adjudicate that event.
So people were terrorized and so forth. And this time, the UN had a problem. The Mavi Marmara was it was overwhelmingly Turks on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't owned by the Mavi Marmara. That was the Comoros, but it was a Turkish vessel. Okay?
Yeah.
And the head of Turkey, who was still the head, Erdogan, he put a lot of pressure. So Gutierrez appoints his fake commission to vindicate Israel, to say Israel didn't do anything wrong. And they did the same. Now, after October 7th, he creates this fake commission headed by Pramila Patten, who says that I have documented cases of rape. And then the next step is they wanted to get Hamas on that list, and he capitulated. Now, as I said at the very beginning, Gutierrez wasn't terrible. He was not. A lot of statements he made were pretty tough. He was a lot better than Ban Ki-moon would have been, his predecessor.
All right, so let's include some important context here. So we'll go claim then verdict again. This happened in May 2010 is true. A flotilla was headed to Gaza, true. It carried humanitarian aid, true. It also intended to break Israel's blockade, true, which is important context here. It also intended to break Israel's blockade. Israeli forces forcibly boarded it. That's true. The interception occurred in international waters, true. 9 passengers were killed, true at the time, and then I think it was one more after, right? Israel simply massacred passive aid workers without resistance. That's not accurate. Israeli use of lethal force was nevertheless seriously criticized. That's strongly supported. So what happened? On May 31st, 2010, Israeli naval forces intercepted a flotilla of 6 vessels attempting to reach Gaza. The UN Secretary General's Palmer panel records that Israeli forces boarded the ships approximately 72 nautical miles from land, well outside Israel's territorial sea. The vessels were carrying people and humanitarian supplies. The flotilla had 2 explicit purposes. Number 1, deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza, and number 2, challenge the Israeli naval blockade and draw international attention to Gaza. The ICC later summarized the organizers' declared purposes almost exactly this way: provide aid, break the blockade, and publicize the humanitarian situation. So calling it a quote, humanitarian flotilla is legitimate, but saying it was only a neutral aid shipment would omit its explicitly political blockade breaking objective. Did Israel attack it? In ordinary language, yes, but forcibly intercepted and boarded is more neutral and analytically precise. Israeli commandos descended from helicopters onto the flagship, the Mavi Marmara, while Israeli forces intercepted the flotilla at sea. Calling it an Israeli, quote, attack isn't fabricated. The UN Human Rights Council's own report was formally concerned with the Israeli, quote, attacks on the flotilla, but the fact-finding mission explicitly said it did not simply assume that characterization was legally correct before conducting its investigation. Israel forcibly intercepted and boarded the flotilla. That's harder to dispute than more rhetorically loaded, quote, attacked. Were 9 people killed? Yes, this is completely correct. From the immediate incident, 9 passengers aboard the Mavi were killed by Israeli forces during the May 31st operation. Numerous others were wounded. There is one important later update. A 10th passenger, and I think Finkelstein rightfully identified this, Uyghur Suleiman Solemez had been shot in the head during the raid, remained in a coma for nearly 4 years, and died in May 2014. The eventual death toll attributed to the incident is therefore generally given as 10. So 9 people were killed. Accurate description of the 2010 death toll. 10 eventually died as a result. So Finkelstein was correct about that. Critical context. Some passengers violently resisted the boarding. This should not be omitted. The UN Palmer panel found that Israeli commandos encountered, quote, significant organized and violent resistance from a group aboard the Mavi Marmara. Passengers attacked Israeli soldiers. 3 soldiers were captured temporarily, and 7 soldiers were wounded. Israel's Turkle Commission similarly found violent resistance and reported 9 Israeli soldiers wounded. There is substantial evidence of passengers using things such as metal bars / clubs, knives or sharp implements, slingshots, and other improvised weapons. Therefore, the simplistic formulation, quote, Israeli soldiers landed on a peaceful ship and started shooting entirely passive humanitarian workers would not accurately describe the confrontation aboard the Mavi. But that does not resolve whether Israel's lethal response was justified. The Palmer panel was extremely critical of Israel's lethal force. This is equally important. The Palmer panel, whose overall legal assessment was comparatively favorable to Israel, still concluded the loss of life and injuries resulting from Israeli force were, quote, unacceptable. It further found that Israel had provided no satisfactory explanation for any of the 9 deaths and highlighted forensic evidence that most of those killed had been shot multiple times, including some shots in the back or at close range. The panel also criticized Israel for undertaking the boarding operation in the manner it did and concluded the greater efforts should have been made to avoid the confrontation. So there are 2 simultaneously true facts. Some Mavi passengers violently attacked Israeli commandos, and a major UN inquiry concluded that Israel's resulting lethal force caused unacceptable deaths for which Israel had no satisfactorily accounted. Deaths for which Israel had not satisfactorily accounted. Neither fact cancels the other. The UN Human Rights Council investigation was even harsher. A separate UN Human Rights Council fact-finding mission interviewed more than 100 witnesses and concluded that Israeli forces committed multiple violations of international humanitarian and human rights law. It characterized Israeli conduct as involving unnecessary and disproportionate violence and described aspects of the operation as demonstrating an unacceptable level of brutality. So Finkelstein is not relying on some fringe characterization when he emphasizes Israeli violence during the raid. But the legality of stopping the flotilla is generally disputed. This is one of the fascinating parts of the incident. The Palmer panel concluded that Israel's naval blockade of Gaza was lawful under international law, and therefore that Israel could enforce the blockade against vessels attempting to breach it, including away from Gaza's territorial waters. By contrast, the Human Rights Council fact-finding mission reached a substantially more critical legal assessment of the blockade and interception. The ICRC also characterized the broader Gaza closure regime as collective punishment contrary to international humanitarian law. Therefore, quote, they were in international waters, therefore Israel automatically had no legal authority to intercept them, is too simplistic. If a naval blockade is legally valid, international maritime law can permit its enforcement on the high seas against ships deliberately attempting to breach it. The key disagreement is therefore partly over the legality of the blockade itself and the proportionality of its enforcement. The ICC later found something particularly significant. The ICC prosecutor examined the Mavi incident. The Office of the Prosecutor concluded that there was a reasonable basis to believe that war crimes had been committed aboard the Mavi, including potential willful killing, intentionally causing serious injury, and outrages upon personal dignity. We've heard the outrages upon personal dignity, outrages upon personal dignity statute yesterday. We went through that in great detail. However, the prosecutor ultimately declined to open a full investigation because she concluded that the potential cases did not satisfy the Rome Statute's gravity threshold for ICC admissibility, not because she concluded that nothing unlawful had occurred. That distinction is extremely important. So, instead of Israel attacks the Mavi Marmara, 9 people are killed. To give a holistic picture, a high resolution picture, we should say Israeli forces forcibly intercepted and boarded the Gaza-bound Mavi Marmara in international waters. A group of passengers violently resisted the boarding. Israeli commandos used lethal force and 9 passengers were killed. A 10th later died from his wounds. UN investigations sharply criticized Israel's use of force, although they disagreed about the legality of the underlying naval blockade. All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you're having a great Saturday evening, if it's still Saturday evening where you are.
He wasn't terrible, but in the moment of truth, he failed Gaza. And then you know what he did? A new report was issued because it's a periodic report. This time, he put Israel on the list. Now you might be wondering, why did he do it this time? You know why he did it this time? Because he has 6 months left in office.
Oh.
So that seems to be something that there's not going to be any evidence. You know, this is a correlation. Can we demonstrate that the causation was because he had 6 months? If Finkelstein doesn't give his evidence, he's just reading into that something that very well might not be the reason as to why Israel was put on the list.
So he has nothing to worry about. The show is over. If you look at the last days of Ban Ki-moon.
So Finkelstein should not believe this. He doesn't have, he hasn't demonstrated or articulated why, because he only has 6 months left, that's reasonable justification to believe that is the reason. he added Israel to the list. So that's not good sound epistemology.
Who said nothing during the various Israeli killing sprees in Gaza. At the very end, the last days, he says something. You take the case of Fatou Bensouda. She was the former chief prosecutor
of the International Criminal Court.
International Criminal Court. Her whole term didn't say, she not only didn't say anything, she fought so hard to protect Israel. And I'll say it because everybody's now acclaiming how Fatou Bensouda resisted and fought back against the Israeli blackmail. That is nonsense. She was either being bribed or blackmailed by Israel until when? She had 3 months left in office. And then...
Don't worry, we're going to adjudicate all of these claims. It's a big claim vomit here.
She says, I'm going to investigate what Israel is doing.
Yeah. Would you
they
say
all do the same thing.
So I actually want to talk about something relevant because this is...
The Gaza Commission of Inquiry members resigned because they had capitulated or their work was exposed. That's kind of like the generalized claim. The commissioners publicly said the resignations were for personal health and transition reasons and denied external pressure. A hidden motive is possible but not established. The commissioners publicly cited personal health and transition reasons and denied external pressure, capitulation, or exposure to an unproven hidden motive theory. So let's, I want to go piece by piece here because there's a lot.
She was the former chief prosecutor
of the International Criminal Court.
International Criminal Court. Her whole term didn't say...
Go back a little further.
She was the former... Then the next step is they wanted to get Hamas on that list, and he capitulated. Now, as I said at the very beginning, Gutierrez wasn't terrible. He was not. A lot of statements he made were pretty tough. He was a lot better than Ban Ki-moon would have been his predecessor. He wasn't terrible. But in the moment of truth, he failed Gaza. And then you know what he did? A new report was issued because it's a periodic report. This time, he put Israel on the list. Now you might be wondering, why did he do it this time? You know why he did it this time? Because he has 6 months left in office.
Oh.
So he has nothing to worry about.
So that's one possibility, but there's a long list of possibilities. He changed his mind. Is just one other possibility. So we would need to understand like the strong, this is where someone who's being epistemically responsible would be like, here are the list of reasons why I believe that and why I feel justified to believe that. Here are some other possible reasons, but I feel this one is most plausible because ultimately this.
Show is over. If you look at the last days of Ban Ki-moon, who said nothing during the various Israeli...
Of what?
She was the former chief prosecutor.
Of the International Criminal Court.
International Criminal Court. Her whole term didn't say, she not only didn't say anything,
There's a lot to sift through here.
She fought so hard to protect Israel. And I'll say it because everybody's now acclaiming how Fatou Bensouda resisted and fought back against the Israeli blackmail. That is nonsense. She was either being bribed or blackmailed by Israel until when? She had 3 months.
She was either being bribed or blackmailed by Israel. That's Finkelstein's belief.
Left in office. And then she says, I'm going to investigate what Israel's doing.
No. Would you
They
say
all-
All right. We got something cooking here. What up, everyone? You all playing nice in the comment section? Very, very quick bathroom break. Make sure you smash that like button. It takes like 1 itty bitty second. On X, I posted this episode. If you could head over to X and share that, I can give you guys the post if you haven't had a chance to do that yet. For this episode. Remember when people were like, nobody's going to call this X. We're going to put our feet in the ground and we're going to call it Twitter. I think people ended up calling it X at the end of the day. Yeah, if you guys could share that one, that would be awesome. Share the stream. Appreciate that. Just going to take a 2-second bathroom break. All right. Totally washed my hands as well. So we got a lot to go through here, but I'm going to let the video push forward a bit.
Oh, they all do the same thing.
So I actually want to talk about something relevant because this is in the news right now.
Kareem Khan is horrible.
So yeah, he initially was the
He
pick.
was horrible. He was Israel's.
Yeah,
he
was the
Israel's
hand-selected
choice.
Israeli choice. Yeah. And what's really interesting about that case is that not only was he the hand-selected Israeli choice, that he also actually came in with an immediate concession towards Afghanistan, towards the United States of America, refusing to prosecute certain war crimes conducted there, if I recall correctly. But Benjamin Netanyahu has been going on the American news channels and claiming that Kareem Khan only chose to prosecute Israel after there were sexual assault allegations launched against him in an effort to, revitalize his career, in an effort to gain favor. Do you?
Okay, we got some information here. Norm Finkelstein says, according to the supplied captions, we take the case of Fatou Bensouda. She was the former chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Then, her whole term, she not only didn't say anything, she fought so hard to protect Israel. He rejects the proposition that she resisted Israeli pressure, calling that, quote, nonsense, and continues, she was either being bribed or blackmailed by Israel. There is now strong evidence that Israeli intelligence subjected Bensouda to surveillance, intimidation, threats, and attempts to compromise or discredit her. But there is no good evidence that Israel bribed her, no good evidence that she capitulated to the pressure, and substantial evidence that she actually continued advancing the Palestine case despite it. So let's deal with the first claim here. Quote, her whole term, she didn't say anything. That's false. This is contradicted by the documentary record. Bensouda did several consequential things involving Israel well before her final months. May 2013, her office opened a preliminary examination in the 2010 Maramara flotilla incident, following a referral by Comoros. In November 2014, she publicly concluded that there was a reasonable basis to believe Israeli forces had committed war crimes aboard the ship, including willful killings and injuries, although she declined a full investigation because she believed the potential cases failed the ICC's gravity threshold. January 16th, 2015, Bensouda formally opened the ICC's preliminary examination of the situation in Palestine, covering alleged crimes in the occupied Palestinian territory from June 13th, 2014 onward. That was not a secret administrative act. The Office of the Prosecutor issued a public announcement. December 20th, 2019, after almost 5 years of preliminary examination, Bensouda announced that all statutory criteria for opening an investigation had been satisfied. She stated that there was a reasonable basis to believe war crimes, quote, have been or are being committed in Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. She simultaneously sought a judicial ruling confirming the territorial extent of the ICC's jurisdiction. March 3rd, 2021, after ICC judges confirmed jurisdiction over Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Bensouda formally opened the criminal investigation. So, like, the implication that Bensouda didn't say anything about Israel during her term is simply false. Quote, she fought so hard to protect Israel. This is unsupported as a motive, but there is a factual basis for some criticism. This is one of those cases where Finkelstein is pointing at something real and then making a psychological inference the evidence cannot establish. And we just called him out for that a few moments ago, if you go back in the video. The strongest evidence for this interpretation is not the main Palestine investigation. It is the Mavi Marmara case. Bensouda's office found in 2014 that there was a reasonable basis to believe Israeli soldiers committed war crimes, etc. We went through that. Then the dispute became unusually prolonged. In 2015, the ICC pretrial chamber found that Bensouda had committed material errors in assessing gravity and ordered her to reconsider. In 2017, she reconsidered but maintained her decision not to investigate. In 2018, the pretrial chamber again ordered reconsideration. Bensouda challenged that ruling. In September 2019, the appeals chamber rejected her appeal and required another reconsideration. In December 2019, she once again concluded that no ICC investigation should be opened, while continuing to acknowledge a reasonable basis to believe IDF personnel committed war crimes. That is a genuine basis for saying Bensouda fought persistently, including through litigation, to preserve her decision not to investigate the Mavi Marmara incident. But this does not prove why. Her stated reason was that the incident failed the Rome Statute's gravity admissibility threshold, not that Israel should be protected. Her office produced extensive legal reasoning defending that position. ICC judges disagreed with aspects of her analysis, but prosecutorial error or excessive legal conservatism is not proof of corrupt motive. And the broader record cuts against the claim that her general objective was to protect Israel. She subsequently concluded that the Palestine situation warranted investigation and eventually opened it. So she repeatedly resisted opening the Mavi Marmara investigation. That's supported. She did so in order to protect Israel, is unsupported motive attribution. Did she delay the Palestine case for years? Yes, but the reason is not established. This is important because there genuinely was a long time. There genuinely was a long timeline. The preliminary examination opened in January 2015 and did not conclude until December 19th, almost 5 years. Bensouda herself later described it as a painstaking preliminary examination lasting close to 5 years. She then made an interesting procedural choice in December 2019. She explicitly said that because Palestine itself had referred the situation, she did not require judicial authorization to open an investigation. Nevertheless, she asked the judges first to decide the territorial jurisdiction question because she considered it a foundational disputed legal issue that should be settled before investigation. That meant another delay. The judges finally ruled in February 2021, and Bensouda opened the investigation the following month. A critic can reasonably argue Bensouda was excessively cautious and Palestine moved painfully slow, but it moved slowly because Israel blackmailed her is a causal claim for which we do not have evidence. So that has not been demonstrated. So from the transcript, she resisted and fought back against Israeli blackmail. That is nonsense. This is where the later evidence hurts Finkelstein's argument badly. So this is simply contradicted by the available evidence. The evidence now strongly suggests that Bensouda was pressured and nevertheless continued the case. The 2024 Guardian plus 972 local call investigation based on more than 24 current and former Israeli intelligence officials, government officials, ICC personnel, diplomats, and lawyers reconstructed an Israeli intelligence campaign against the ICC beginning after Palestine joined the court. It reported surveillance of ICC communications, hacking and monitoring of Palestinian organizations communicating with the court, secret Israeli contacts with Bensouda's office, and a personal pressure campaign led by Mossad director Yossi Cohen. 4 sources familiar with Bensouda's Contemporaneous disclosures said she had informed senior ICC officials that Cohen repeatedly pressured her not to proceed. Sources reported that he referred threateningly to her and her family's security, while Israeli intelligence also acquired information concerning her husband that was later used in an attempted smear campaign. The Israeli Prime Minister's office broadly rejected the Guardian investigation as containing false and unfounded allegations. Cohen did not provide a substantive response to the original investigation. No court has adjudicated the allegations against Cohen. But something important happened afterward. Bensouda herself confirmed the core allegations. In a May 2026 Al Jazeera interview, Bensouda publicly described Mossad pressure over the Palestine investigation. She confirmed that Cohen wanted the investigation stopped and said she perceived his communications concerning herself and her family as threats. She also described men appearing at her private home after the Palestine examination began. And as early as November 2024, Bensouda had publicly stated that threats and intimidation did not prevent her office from fulfilling its obligations. That is directly contrary to Finkelstein's suggestion that the idea she resisted the pressure is, quote, nonsense. Most importantly, the chronology itself demonstrates resistance. Israel wanted the Palestine investigation stopped. Bensouda ultimately opened the Palestine investigation. Whether she moved as aggressively as she should have is a separate question. This quote, she was either being bribed or blackmailed by Israel. So we need to split these. Let's deal with bribed first. That's unsupported. There is no credible evidence available that Israel paid Bensouda money or supplied her with benefits in exchange for favorable ICC decisions. There is an unusual $500 incident, but it actually points in the opposite direction. After she opened, had to check something. Oh. Sorry about that. After she opened the Palestine examination in 2015, unidentified men appeared at her home and delivered an envelope containing cash. Bensouda's 2026 account says she interpreted this not as an attempt to purchase her cooperation, but as an intimidating demonstration that whoever sent them knew where she lived. She reported it to ICC security and Dutch authorities. The Guardian's earlier investigation independently reported essentially the same incident and said an ICC review believed Israel was likely signaling that it knew her private address. So therefore, there is evidence involving cash. There is not evidence that Bensouda took an Israeli bribe. Calling her bribed risks falsely accusing her of corruption. Surely it would take more than $500. I don't know about you guys, but how's everyone doing? Hanging in there? We're doing it. We're getting through it. Yeah, she's like, she gets the envelope and she's like, wow, oh man, here's my big payday. It's $500. Davin, how can you tell this is a wig? I spent so much money trying to hide that fact. blackmailed. Was she blackmailed? The verdict is substantially supported in a broad sense. More precise language is preferable. The public evidence supports surveillance, repeated personal pressure, threats involving Bensouda and her family, acquisition of compromising or potentially compromising material relating to her husband, use of that material in an attempted smear campaign, efforts to convince her to abandon the Palestine case. This is extremely close to what ordinary people mean by coercion or blackmail. However, if we use blackmail in its strict criminal law sense, we should be cautious. The publicly available evidence does not establish through a judicial proceeding a precise condition transaction such as stop the prosecution or we will publish this material. What is much more securely established is Israeli intelligence appears to have subjected Bensouda to surveillance, intimidation, personal threats, and an attempted smear campaign intended to influence the Palestine investigation. Let's see. So there was a lot of claims in this section. I'm sorry to call it claim vomit, but sometimes it's the only possible description. No other possible description exists. So let's look at Finkelstein's propositions here. So, and then we'll say the verdict. So Bensouda was ICC chief prosecutor. That's supported. Her whole term didn't say anything about Israel-Palestine. False. She, quote, fought so hard procedurally to keep the Mavi Marmara matter from becoming a full investigation. That has substantial factual basis. She did that to protect Israel. Unsupported motive attribution. Israeli actors pressured Bensouda over Palestine. That's strongly supported. Mossad chief Yossi Cohen personally pressured, threatened her. That's strongly supported, but not judicially adjudicated. Israel surveillanced her, ICC, and sought compromising material. That's strongly supported by investigation and later corroboration. She was bribed by Israel. That's unsupported. She was blackmailed, intimidated, coerced. There's a strong factual basis for intimidated, threatened, which is more precise. The pressure caused her years of delay. That's unsupported. She did not resist Israeli pressure. That's contradicted by her actions and testimony. The formal Palestine investigation began only about 3 months before she left office. That's supported. She only began addressing Palestine at that point. False. So, Israel appears to have mounted a serious intelligence and intimidation campaign against ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, including personal threats and surveillance intended to deter the Palestine investigation. But there is no credible evidence she was bribed or that the pressure caused her delays. The record shows she continued advancing the Palestine case and ultimately opened a full investigation before leaving office. So maybe if Finkelstein had the true factual information, he would be less inclined to engage in mind reading, motive attribution. But, you know, he shouldn't be doing that anyway. And he should update his research because he's non-factual and misleading about a lot of this stuff in this particular section. Okay. We're going to go for about another hour. Tonight won't be too long. I would like to spend some time with my wifey. We're probably gonna watch some true crime. My son Aegean, who is going to be 2 December 20th, is asleep. Our little baby Journey, who's just over a month old, is she's up. You know, she sleeps throughout the day, but she's up every hour and a half, couple hours. For feeding. She's feeding really well, by the way. She gained a kilogram in a month, which was fantastic. Fantastic gains, making the gains. Okay. What else we got here?
You feel like that was potentially, because it looks like it has the hallmarks of Israeli blackmail, or just blackmail in general, not just Israeli blackmail.
First of all, Kareem Khan did nothing during his term, from the beginning of his term of office, in defense of Palestine, Gaza. There was now an ongoing investigation. That was what Fatou Bensouda, she launched an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
He did absolutely nothing. And then he had a problem. The problem was October 7th.
Yeah.
How do you do nothing? You acted with a blink of an eye over Putin in the Ukraine.
I just caught something here. Who did it's really hard to hear who he's mentioning. Is it something Khan? Chat, do you guys know who he's mentioning? Curry Khan or something? Anyways, I'll look into that, because now I'm wondering if Norm Finkelstein, for some of that stuff, he wasn't talking about Bensouda. Maybe you guys don't know, but we'll try to figure it out here. Someone in the comment, Kareem Khan. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it here as well as soon as you post it, but I really appreciate that post. Someone said, trying to defend a genocidal state is weird. That's not what we are doing here. We are fact checking. And also, I will give my ethical opinion along the way relating to the fact check, so that we can clear up any misinformation in this video, which so far there's been a buttload of it. By the way, buttload is a academic measurement term. And so yeah, this isn't about defending. I think when you say that, you're probably talking about Israel. I don't think it's been demonstrated yet that Israel has, in fact, committed a genocide. I am waiting for the ICJ to make their determination, and I will almost certainly believe the findings of the ICJ and agree with their deliberation and determination. So that's what I'm waiting for. I think that's the ethically responsible thing to do. Running around just saying genocide because there's a number of human rights organizations and different organizations that have determined this to be a genocide, I haven't seen good, sufficient reason to believe that there is an intent, that there has been an intent to commit genocide. That's a very important aspect that separates genocide from other determinations like war crimes, ethnic cleansing, things like that. So I think it's ethically irresponsible to actually be going around to be claiming that there's a genocide when there's not strong sufficient evidence of intent to do so. But that's not saying the ICJ might uncover intent or be able to demonstrate intent. And if they can demonstrate intent to commit genocide, then that's going to be the determination. And I think that should be believed. So yeah, and we're not going to get that determination until like 2030 or 2031. So no, that's not how it works. I'm responding to Tinkle Tink. Says, look at Gaza. It's not hard to see. That is not how this works. That is not how the International Court is going to determine genocide. If you're saying that the proportionality of the October 7th attack and what has happened in Gaza seems drastically out of whack, I would fully agree with you. I think there is a massive proportionality issue here. And I think there are some strong cases for war crimes. There are some strong cases for, some things being said from positions of power that can be consistent with ethnic cleansing. But all of that stuff is not a demonstration of genocidal intent. You need to be able to demonstrate that. It's not about, a wasteland in certain areas in Gaza of demolished buildings. That's not going to do it. I'm saying, I know that there are organizations out there that are going to make their own determinations and do their own investigations. But I think the ethically responsible thing to do is to wait for the International Court to do their full investigation. Just like, and I think this is the same for cases. Like, a lot of people will want to chastise individuals who are on trial for murder or for other things, and they're convinced in their mind that they did it before they even hear the case. We haven't seen what will almost certainly be an overwhelming amount of evidence and counter evidence by Israel itself when it comes to the International Court hearings. So there's so much to consider here before just, agreeing with determinations from human rights organizations around the world who aren't equipped to and who don't have Israel's body of evidence and counter evidence. That's just, they don't have access to that. The International Court of Justice will have access to that. Someone saying it's not about killing as many as possible. That might be a very low resolution, non-academic, non-legal way of trying to talk about genocidal intent. But all you have to do, and we've gone through it many times, is, go to the ICJ's website and start reading and learning about what it takes to demonstrate genocidal intent or demonstrate a genocide. So let's move on to Karim Khan. He is the prosecutor who succeeded Fatou Bensouda as prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, in June 2021. Finkelstein moves almost directly from his criticism of Bensouda to Khan, so some of this stuff might be a bit confusing. Finkelstein's claim cue, Karim Khan essentially, quote, did nothing on Palestine until October 7th and then acted because he needed to, quote, save face. Then Finkelstein says Khan proceeded against 3 Hamas figures and 2 Israelis. Okay. Khan, on May 20th, 2024, Khan announced applications for arrest warrants for Hamas, Yeha Sinwar, Mohammed Daif, and Ismail Haniyeh, and Israel Benjamin Netanyahu, and Yoav Gallant. The ICC judges subsequently issued warrants in November 2024 for Netanyahu, Gallant, and Daif. Haniyeh and Sinwar had lied before the judges completed consideration of their applications. Oh, sorry. Hinyahu and Sinwar had died before the judges completed consideration of their applications. Finkelstein's Khan argument needs a separate deep fact check here. Our initial report rated Khan did nothing on Palestine until October 7th and acted only to save face, was unsupported. The reason is important. Khan inherited an already open Palestine investigation from Bensouda that we went through in June. He adopted in June 2021. His office did perform work on the situation before October 7th. So, quote, did nothing is too categorical, and, quote, only to save face is a hidden motive claim that cannot be established simply from the timing of the warrant applications. Yeah, Finkelstein has a mind reading problem. Just this hidden motive claim happens a lot in political discourse. Hasan doesn't stop it, notice it. Maybe he agrees with it. How aggressively did Karim Khan actually pursue the Palestine investigation between June 2021 and October 7th? There's a moth in here trying to attack me. What investigative activity occurred under Khan before October 7th? Oh, well, let's look at this. Yeah, so how aggressively did Karim Khan actually pursue the Palestine investigation between 2021 and October 7th, 2023? This is more complicated than our original short entry captures. We should reconstruct what investigative activity occurred under Khan before October 7th, his public statements on Palestine, whether resources were assigned, whether victims or Palestinian organizations complained of neglect, how Palestine compared with the speed resources devoted to Ukraine, what changed after October 7th when Khan first visited Israel, Palestine, whether there is evidence explaining the acceleration, and whether Finkelstein's save face theory has any evidentiary support. Yeah, we will continue our deep dive into that issue. Oh, I really appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. Bell Runner says, thank you. $5 super chat says, appreciate your patience and thoroughness on checking each and every claim in these conversations and maintaining integrity in the face of detractors. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate you. One says, hell yeah, glad your girl's happy and healthy. She is so happy and healthy. She also has the face of her mother when she's looking very curiously at something and wondering what it's all about. She's got a very curious way about her so far. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Someone sent me the footage of this. Thank you so much to Deadly Debraz on Discord. So this is the close-up footage of Mavi Marmara passengers attacking IDF soldiers. I think that's important for our fact check. Let's take a look. Make sure I have it. Screen. Okay, they're coming in. Yeah, God, I really wish these people would have just stood back, not resist. Surely, I mean, it's hard to say. I wonder if they knew that it was Israeli forces. Yeah, there's a big fight, and yeah, people are being hit with weapons, soldiers being hit with metal poles and chairs. Ugh. I hate that 10 people were killed who were they're trying to do the right thing. They feel strongly that you know they want to resist this blockade. They want to get humanitarian support in there, but you have to, whoever's organizing things like this, you have to have protocols that are going to protect people's well-being. If the military is trying to board, you do not resist them with violence. You stay there, you stand there peacefully and do what they say. That might seem like, and I give this same advice for, like, if the police are trying to arrest you for something, or they pull you over and they're trying to question you, or like don't resist arrest. The time to fight police is not in that very moment. It's through the courts. If you in fact are wrongfully accused of something, or there's behavior against you from police officers that is illegal, then that will be adjudicated in court, and it should be adjudicated in court. But I think 10 people would still be alive today here if this wasn't the reaction. It's an awful situation. Surely they would have known that they're going into territory and doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So the procedures should have been, you just, remain peaceful in situations like this. It's terrible. Demonstrators throwing a soldier off of boat. Soldiers being hit with metal rods. Oh man. Is that a paintball gun? Oh, that's a real gun. It really looked like a paintball gun from that angle. I shouldn't say that, but it popped into my mind. Like, I've played paintball before, and it looks like where you dump the paintballs into. Obviously, it's not a paintball gun. Oh, man. I hate seeing that stuff. I really do. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna finish adjudicating this Khan situation, Kareem Khan situation, and then we'll be done for today. January 6th. Oh, man. If anyone wants me to answer a particular question or comment on something or adjudicate something that we related to what we went through today, shoot me a super chat and I will do so. But we are in that final leg here of today's adjudication. Then after this, we'll all have the rest of the night off. You guys all fuel me to do this, so thank you so much for being here. I know fact checking it's not a popular thing in this world, but I think it's so damn important that everyone becomes more epistemically responsible. Politics in particular is a place that suffers gravely from a lack of epistemic responsibility, a lack of good sound epistemology, good sound knowledge making. Okay. So, to finish off today, let's see. I'm going to go to the we're going to go a little bit further in the video here, and then we'll do some reading.
And you're doing nothing in the case of this genocide in Gaza? So he had to do something to save face. Now remember, you have to laugh. He indicted 3 members of Hamas and 2 Israelis.
Yeah.
3 members of Hamas and 2 Israelis? Would you mind showing me the numbers? About maybe 50,000 killed at that point.
Yeah.
50,000 killed versus 1,000 killed? And there are 3 indictments against Hamas and 2 against Israel. So he had to do something. He had to do something. And then he was punished for doing something. The funny thing is...
Okay. So there's a lot here in this section. Yeah, at 117.25.
Concession towards Afghanistan, towards the United States of America, refusing to prosecute certain war crimes conducted there, if I recall correctly. But Benjamin Netanyahu has been going on the American news channels and claiming that Kareem Khan only chose to prosecute Israel after there were sexual assault allegations launched against him in an effort to, revitalize his career, in an effort to gain favor. Do you feel like that was potentially, because it looks like it has the hallmarks of Israeli blackmail, or just blackmail in general, not just Israeli blackmail?
First of all, Kareem Khan did nothing during his term, from the beginning of
I'm playing this again because we're going to go through all of
his
it.
term of office in defense of Palestine, Gaza. There was now an ongoing investigation. That was what Fatou Bensouda, she launched an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
He did absolutely nothing. And then he had a problem. The problem was October 7th.
Yeah.
How do you do nothing? You acted with a blink of an eye over Putin in the Ukraine, and you're doing nothing in the case of this genocide in Gaza. So he had to do something to save face. Now remember, you have to laugh. He indicted 3 members of Hamas and 2 Israelis.
Yeah.
3 members of Hamas and 2 Israelis? Would you mind showing me the numbers? About maybe 50,000 killed at that point.
Yeah.
50,000 killed versus 1,000 killed? And there are 3 indictments against Hamas and 2 against Israel. So he had to do something. And then he was punished for doing something. The funny thing is...
Okay, let's look at all this. There was first the claim by Hasan that Netanyahu claims Khan pursued Israel to save his career after sexual misconduct allegations. Supported that Netanyahu made that claim. Underlying causal claim is just unsupported. Hasan, the situation has the, quote, hallmarks of Israeli general blackmail. This is a speculative question. That hasn't been established. Finkelstein, Khan did nothing on Palestine from the beginning of his term. That's false, literally. There's a strong basis for under prioritization criticism, but this like general claim he did nothing, that's literally false. He did more than nothing. Finkelstein, Khan acted, quote, in the blink of an eye against Putin while doing nothing on Palestine. Qualified, major speed, resource disparity was real. And we're going to go through all these in detail, by the way. Finkelstein, October 7th, forced Khan to act. This is a qualified claim. Finkelstein, Khan acted, quote, to save face. That's unsupported motive attribution again by Finkelstein. He does this a lot. Completely unsupported motive attribution, also known as mind reading. Finkelstein, Khan indicted 3 Hamas leaders and 2 Israelis. That's qualified. Warrant applications, not indictments. So they were warrant applications, not indictments, but generally qualified. Finkelstein, maybe 50,000 Palestinians versus 1,000 Israelis had been killed at that point. That's qualified. Numerically loose, but qualified. Finkelstein, 3 Hamas cases versus 2 Israeli cases incongruous given casualty numbers. That's a misleading inference. We'll get into that. Finkelstein, Khan was subsequently punished for doing something. Real retaliation existed. Causal connection to his 2026 removal is unproven. So we're missing that causal connection. We're getting a lot of correlation. We're not getting the causation. Correlation in and of itself does not, of course, mean causation. The causation still needs to be demonstrated. Okay, so Hasan accurately described a later Netanyahu accusation. Hasan asked whether this looks like Israeli blackmail. There is powerful evidence that Israel conducted surveillance and influence operations against the ICC generally, including against Bensouda, who we went through, and subsequently Khan's office. More recently, reporting concerning an October 2024 recorded conversation between Netanyahu and U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham indicates Netanyahu discussed using the, quote, sexual misconduct allegations to help delay the ICC judge's decision on his arrest warrant. That is significant evidence of weaponizing the allegations against Khan, but it establishes something different from Israel manufactured the allegations or Israel blackmailed Khan into pursuing or not pursuing particular cases. Those propositions remain unproven. In fact, by 2026, the misconduct allegations had developed into an independent institutional matter, serious enough that 82 ICC member states voted to remove Khan from office while Khan continued to deny wrongdoing and challenged the process. So Hasan's suspicion of an external pressure campaign is not baseless, but blackmail remains an unproven causal inference. Finkelstein says Khan, quote, did absolutely nothing on Palestine. This is the central factual error. Finkelstein says Karim Khan did nothing during his term from the beginning of his term of office in defense of Palestine, Gaza. He repeats he did absolutely nothing. That's false literally. Bensouda formally opened the Palestine investigation on March 3rd, 2021, before Khan took office. Under Khan, the ICC's own 2022 performance report states that the investigation remained ongoing and that the prosecutor's office was collecting information, evidence, preserving it, analyzing it, communicating with civil society organizations, exploring cooperation, and meeting Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad Malki. The ICC report explicitly says positive progress had been made despite security and cooperation problems. Khan later said that when he took office in June 2021, he established a dictated team for the Palestine investigation. The ICC's subsequent program report confirms that account. So therefore, absolutely nothing is demonstrably false by Finkelstein. There's currently no documentary evidence showing Khan sought the Netanyahu Gallant warrants because he personally needed to save face over his previous Palestine inactivity. So Khan did absolutely nothing before October 7th. That was false. Khan substantially underprioritized Palestine relative to Ukraine. There's strong evidentiary bias that's qualified. October 7th caused a major acceleration that's supported. He accelerated specifically to save face is unsupported. So about maybe 50,000 killed versus 1,000 killed. The arrest warrant applications were announced May 20th, 2024. OCHA's exact May 20th snapshot reported 35,562 Palestinian fatalities, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health. More than 10,000 additional people reported missing or under rubble, according to Gaza authorities. Over 1,200 Israeli and foreign fatalities in Israel, overwhelmingly from October 7th and its immediate aftermath. Okay, so those are approximations, sure. Finkelstein's 3 Hamas versus 2 Israel comparison is analytically misleading. Finkelstein's implication is roughly, how can there be 3 Hamas defendants and only 2 Israelis when vastly more Palestinians have died? That is not how individual criminal prosecutions work. The number of defendants is not supposed to be proportional to the number of casualties caused by each side, the size of each military, or some numerical balance of blame. Prosecutors seek warrants against particular people for whom they believe the evidence establishes individual criminal responsibility. Cons may applications allege different crimes and different responsibility theories for the 5 named individuals. You could legitimately ask why additional Israeli officials were not charged, but 3 Hamas suspects versus 2 Israeli suspects does not itself demonstrate prosecutorial bias. That's an official category error. And then Finkelstein says, and then he was punished for doing something. This becomes particularly important because this interview occurred in August 2026, just after Khan was removed as prosecutor. What objectively happened? Khan faced enormous political retaliation over the Israel case, including pressure and sanctions. Israeli intelligence operations targeting the ICC are well documented, and Israeli U.S. Political figures sought ways to impede the warrants. So in a broad sense, Khan suffered consequences for pursuing Israeli leaders. That's supported. But the immediate context then moves into the sexual misconduct controversy and Kenneth Roth. If Finkelstein means Khan was removed from office because he prosecuted Israel, that is not established. Therefore, the allegations were politically weaponized against Khan. That's supported. The allegations / removal were an Israeli operation designed to punish him for the warrants. That part is unproven. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, I want to thank you so much again for being with me tonight. I'm going to be live almost every night doing fact checking like this, and I really do appreciate it when you guys show up and support the stream. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday evening or Sunday morning. And yeah, just please make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. Thank you again so much for the super chats. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll be live again tomorrow, same time. And we will keep chipping away at this, what has turned into another monster project.